Hello everyone, this is Harish. I'm a practicing lawyer at Punjab and Haryana High Court at Chandigarh, and I am today thankful to the team of Tech Sapphire, which has granted me this opportunity to speak on few issues which has been arising at their turf, as well as I have been made aware that lot many other firms and people are also facing the same problems. But before that, during these crazy times of the pandemic, I hope everyone is following the social distancing norms. Please kindly wear masks. Do not make a mistake to take this virus and this pandemic lightly. This is very deadly. Get your vaccinations if it is happening in your area. Wear your masks, sanitize your hands, and just try not to step out of your house unless it is really necessary to go out. Please take care of yourself. Now, for today's video, Texafire has basically asked me few problems which has arisen in their office with regard to hiring of, as I would say, freelancer developers or computer engineers for a particular project, which may or may not involve coding, or it may be just a small case of uh, service project basically. Well, I have taken some notes. I'll be referring to those within my video, so just please kindly uh, don't mind that. Before I begin anything, I think I must submit this caveat that for a lawyer or a legal professional, it is quite difficult to propound a precise solution to a hypothetical problem. We need to know a case in a particular facts of a particular case to give a proper solution to that problem. However, we can lay down a general holistic outlook of the basic remedies, or as I would say, solutions which may be available for the redressal or violations or few contingencies which may be arising with the hiring of freelancers or engineers. Well, Texafire has quoted me few general scenarios which arises with the signing of a freelancer or a developer. For example, one of the case which has been cited to me that how to protect a code or an application from being resold or misappropriated by some unauthorized customer. What legal action can be taken, especially when you are situated uh, out of jurisdiction of that particular person or sitting quite far. Let's say a person is sitting in Canada or New Zealand and he has some legal issues arising with the conduct or the actions of some professional. What action can be taken? Then another thing which has been asked from me is how to protect the code or application from a freelancer or the concerned engineer deleting the copy of code from his system. Another case is in case if a professional is hired, then how can we stop the violation of its intellectual property rights of the firm? And in case there is no written specific agreement with the concerned hired professional, how can what solutions would be there in that case? uh, in India, there are two, three laws which basically deals with the hiring of such professionals. When it comes to the violations, two basic laws which comes into play are Information Technology Act of year 2000 and in Indian Penal Code, which is a general code pertaining to the criminal actions of a person. But I today won't be touching more of that part, but rather would be discussing with you, or rather be presenting my small presentation on signing of contract or the agreement with the hired professional. In many cases, from various people and the various persons who have contacted me with particular problems with the hiring of professionals, I have come to know, I have seen this, like observed this fact that not many of them sign a specific agreement of their service with the freelancer, um, which actually give birth to many problems at the later stage, which just luckily it is almost equal to finding a good doctor for providing solution to you, just in case that doctor isn't suiting or is not good enough, then your treatment might go wrong and then things can go haywire. So a written contract is very important. I think I today should stress upon every person who is seeing this video to kindly take into this uh, aspect into consideration, that before you hire somebody, a written exchange or a correspondence between two parties, two people, must exist so far as with regard to rights and liabilities between two people. A written form in Indian Contract Act, which is a quite an old code with governing the contract related issues, it says that a written understanding is good enough of a contract. So if there is a written correspondence, at least written correspondence at the beginning or the starting of that concerned project, I think it'll go a long way in helping you out just in case some problems arises with that particular person. Now I'll highlight a few things about a written contract, that what can you include into it so as to bound or to bind a person to observe those things. So I think there are several things we call this sort of contract, which is worked upon by a lawyer or a concerned person who knows how to draft a contract. I use a term called watertight contract or a straight jacket piece of instrument, which means all specific details of the work and all corollary issues surrounding the work which you have to sign must be specifically mentioned in the contract. For example, a clause pertaining to non-disclosure of data by a freelancer, or if you are hiring a firm for a particular work, then any employee of that firm, that non-disclosure of any data being exchanged between the two is a very serious issue. And I have seen in various cases that this non-disclosure of data becomes a very big problem when one of an interns goes crazy or just is not is annoyed by his employer, and suddenly he just throws out the data of a customer or the person, and that company is suddenly facing a lot of financial problem due to that. There are condition and clauses pertaining to third party access to your data that can be specifically laid down. Then there has to be a specific clause pertaining to intellectual property rights. For example, if you are working on some project and in that project there is some novelty coming into, there is some code or new code is being written, or as the term is used in the intellectual property scenario, it's called inventive step. So any work of such nature, who would be benefiting from that invention or inventive step? So all these conditions, these are just general condition, I think, which can be laid down in a written form, and which I think should be written, must be written, because of two reasons. One, it also acts as a psychological uh, barrier for a person to not to do something wrong, or he is somewhere there is something going back of the mind, that I have signed a contract and I can be sued just because I breached the terms of the contract. Second, In a court of law, of course, when there is a written contract, you can hold a person liable for its violations. Though in India, the litigation scenario is very tough in the sense of its longevity. It can be really tiring. So that should be a very last resort going to a court in India. Of course, I am saying it with full responsibility. Um, Another thing which must be there in a written contract is with regard to the arbitration clause. Now, this is something very unique. Arbitration, as you might be aware of, is a procedure where, in case of any dispute arising between the two parties, a person is mutually decided to decide upon that particular issue, and he can award or he can pass a judgment with regard to that particular dispute. Now, arbitration is again an expensive process. Expensive in the sense that if a party undertakes an arbitration, then there has to be fee paid for the arbitrator, and the fees of arbitrator is governed in Indian parlance, at least, is governed under the Indian Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996, and the proper fees and everything has been laid down in that. So, in case where a project is quite involving huge financial stakes for a particular person, then a carefully drafted arbitration clause has to be inducted into that contract or written agreement. Now, what can be included into that arbitration? An arbitration clause constitutes itself a separate or a big contract in itself, whereby the terms of appointment of an arbitrator, in what conditions can an arbitration be invoked, at what place an arbitration can take place, and what would be the manner of conducting that particular arbitration. Every specific details can be filled into that arbitration clause, and it would be really advisable for everybody where you are entering into a service agreement, especially for longer periods, or a project which you know that would take at least a year or two, or its development is going to take some long time, and there's a lot of financial exchanges, complicated technical financial exchanges, which may uh, lead to some disputes in case of breach of some condition between the two. Then I think it is highly advisable for you to induct a properly drafted arbitration clause into that agreement. Then there are miscellaneous things which you can do actually in case there is not a possibility of physically going and signing two people signing physical copy of a contract. Then at least there must be a specific email or a document, or at least a written digital document may be exchanged with regard laying down every right and the liabilities of two parties. That must be exchanged before the work is started or initiated by any of the parties. Now, with regard to freelancers, now it has been observed in many of the cases that with freelancers it's quite difficult to get hold of them for the very obvious reasons, because there is no proper office, or there is no there is no illegal entity which can be held liable, or there is no employer which can be held liable for that. Then in case of a firm, you are hiring a freelancer, let's say, then there are few things which you can undertake as precautionary measures before you assign a person a particular contract, or particular task to do something. For example, you can take copy of their Aadhaar cards, which are issued by government, and Aadhaar card or their proper identification, for example, a copy of passports, and in case it's a registered firm, then a GST number, that is general sale tax number, would be given. in case of registered firms. Then proper banking details of the professional may be mentioned in the contract, and all financial transactions may be carried on in their respective account, which may be mentioned in the contract. Then you must try to clarify in the contract the very nature of the work. You know, if the professional is hired as an agency or an employee as or a service provider, then these terms has to be properly taken care of. Well, preferably terms of contract, as you may render important, must be thoroughly discussed, shafted out, and must be agreed between two parties. Now, these are some basic highlights of a contract which I think you must enter into, or there has to be some specific um, written correspondence with regard to the rights, duties, and liabilities of a person which whom you are paying to get the job done. Now, there's a scenario which I have just discussed earlier, that what if you haven't signed any agreement or contract, there doesn't exist any formal correspondence where freelancer agreed on code safety or non-disclosure of the code, but he has somehow breached that understanding. Now, usual discourse to deal with such matters is to file a civil suit or a criminal complaint in a trial court, where preliminary injunctions can also be sought on the use of any such application if its use cause some irreparable loss to you. But as I have told you earlier, that in India, due to the longevity, these lawsuits can be really tiring. But in case an immediate loss is being caused to you, then there are economic offenses wings in every state, whereby a complaint for violation of the Information Technology Act or any Indian Penal Code, for example, breach of trust is one of the offenses which has been mentioned under the Indian Penal Code. For example, you entrust a particular application to a particular person, then and he sort of illegally sells it without your permission, then it can amount to breach of trust, which is a punishable offense under the Indian Penal Code, as well as it makes an offense under the Information Technology Act, which can be a subject matter of a separate video, which I think I'll try in coming days to put up before you. Now, who will do this all legal work for you guys? Well, since I presume that you cannot come to India in case of international viewers for taking these legal measures, so it is recommended that a legal professional who has been granted license for practice law under the Advocates Act must be hired. Legal firms can also be engaged, and in those cases, I would strongly recommend to get service contract with regard to such services which must exist. Means, even if you are dealing with a law firm and your project is going to continue for, let's say, 2 3 years, or you know that you're going to face some legal issues and you want to have a person on retainership, I think in that case also you must hire a service contract with that particular law firm or individual lawyer if you want to hire individual lawyer. That signing of agreements has its own perks in the long run. It may be cumbersome in the beginning, but it'll serve you lot many benefits in cases of disputes arising at various stages, which must be there. You must all have been facing a lot. So underlining is, a well drafted contract would go a long way to save yourself from future harassments. Well, I think I should rest my case before you guys here. I will write down my email ID. So, in case you have some specific queries, I would like to help you out with those. And with regard to any queries of today's video presentation, please, I would welcome any questions. I hope this video has been quite instructive and some help to you people. If even if not, please feel free to comment and share your views on the video to my email ID. Just take out your time and it'll go a long way for me to improve my content, which may be helpful to you people. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Texifier. And please again be safe, follow social distancing norms, wear masks, use sanitizers, stay safe. God bless you all. Thank you.